Hello there, welcome to the Learning of Engineering tutorials. In this video lectures we are going to try to see what is the mechanism and what is the machine, how a mechanism will become a machine. These topics we are dealing in the kinematics of the machines. It is the part of the theories of machines. So there we can see the sum of the contents we are going to be discussing in this case is what is the mechanism, what is a machine, what is a structure, and the real world applications. So in this video lectures, there we can see here the extra simple walker we are going to be providing. So these are the completely the mechanical elements we are using with the different connections of the lower pairs as well as the higher pairs we are using for the generation of the walking mechanism to the system. And there we can see here is the real world application of the cheetah, mini cheetah we are going to be saying. It's a one type of the robot. Right, so it is doing the different activities. It's standing on a single legs and it is going to be up and down directions. It is going to be standing. So these are all possible. That's because of the mechanisms as well as the machines. So that we can see here when the degrees of freedom is equal to 0, when the degrees of freedom is equal to 1. So then automatically that's going to be a different situations it is going to be creating in the engineering structures. So there we can see what is the mechanism. So there we can see the mechanism is the combination of the rigid bodies or the restraining bodies are nothing but the resistance bodies which are so shaped and connected that they move upon each other with a definite relative motion is known as the mechanism. So in this case what he is saying, when the two shaped, that means the two links we are going to be taking, when they are going to be connected or assembled together, and when we are giving any displacement or the force to the systems, they have to maintain a relative motions between that. So right, so that's what he's saying, which are so shaped and connected that they move upon each other with a definite relative motion. That means the relative motion is going to be exactly predicted or a desired output we have to be mentioned. So there we can see here the two mechanisms I'm going to be showing to say that there is a definite relative motions we have to be generate. The first one is going to be Maltese the cross mechanisms. These mechanisms are widely using in our mechanical watches, right? In the watches, either wall clocks or maybe the wrist watches we are going to be using this case. So when it comes to the different types of hands we do have in the clocks. So there we can see seconds hand, minutes hand and hours hand. They do have a different relative velocity, the relative motion is existed. So that's we are going to be creating with this kind of the mechanism. The second one is the quick return mechanisms. There we can see in this quick return mechanisms, these are going to be developing in the workshops. That mechanism is the shaper mechanisms we are going to say. So in this case, the forward stroke we are using to cut the materials of the unwanted material from the stock bar, and the return stroke must become in a fast manner. So that mechanisms we are going to be using over here. So there we can see here there is a bull gear system is there, and there is the slot crank lever mechanism is going to be there and connecting, and the slider is there. Can you see the slider is moving in the slider guideways, and similarly the slider is moving in that part because of the relative motions we are creating because of these kind of the mechanisms. So there we can see the different mechanisms we can see. Ratchet mechanisms we had to have, the slider crank mechanism. These are the basic mechanisms we are going to be see. The next one is the constant velocity joints we are going to be creating, so that the transition to the wheels we are going to be continuously we are going to be transmitting the power. So these are the mechanisms are widely using in our mechanical systems. So what is the machine? So the machine is a mechanism or a combination of the mechanisms which are not only the imparts the definite motion to the parts, but also transmits and modifies the available mechanical energy into some kind of useful work. So already we have seen the mechanism we are going to be creating a definite relative motions between the two links or combined links. So that is going to be predicted. And next, what will happen to convert the one form of the energy into the another form of the energy? So then what we are going to do, we are going to be assemble the mechanism or the combination of the mechanisms we are using, and we are creating a definite motions we are going to be creating, and converting energy also is going to be taking place. For the example we are going to be see here, this is going to be the lathe machines I am going to be showing here. So in this lathe machines, what will happen? So in the lathe machines, it's taking the electrical energy and it is going to be converting into the mechanical shaft work or a torque work it is going to be generating. So in this case, so conversion of your electrical energy into the mechanical energy, and similarly there is a definite relative motion is going to be created. In this case, there is a different types of mechanisms are going to be existed between the different parts, right? It is a combination of mechanisms, and finally it is going to be creating, it is removing the excessive material from the raw materials, so that we are going to be generating the definite shape and size of the component. So here we can see the conversion of mechanism into emissions. There we can see automobile IC engines I have seen. So there we can see stroke 1, stroke 2, 3, as well as the 4 strokes we are going to be using. The inlet is going to be coming, compression and expansion and exhaust. There we can see the slider crank mechanism will become emissions when it is used in automobile engines by adding the valve mechanisms. If I am going to be adding the valves mechanisms, in this case it is giving an opportunity to us is becoming a closed chamber. So the fuel gases, that means air and fuel mixture is entering into the cylinders and combustion is going to be taking place. So then after it is going to be exhaust is coming. So this is the way we are going to be converting the mechanism into a emissions. So there we can see here how we are going to be converting here. So it will convert the available energy, where the energy is available, the force on the piston, into a desired energy is the torque on the crankshaft. This torque will move the vehicle in the forward directions. Already we experienced it in our life regarding this kind of the mechanisms. So there we can see here what is the structure in this case. So in this case, what happened, one cable bridge we are going to be see. At the same time, some of the vehicles are going to be moving on this one. When a vehicle is moving on that vehicles, there we can see there is going to be different types of the displacements are going to be existed on this part. So right, so the structure is a collection of the resistance bodies that do not move relative to each other. In this case, what will happen, the degrees of freedom is equal to 0. But in particularly in the civil structures, this kind of the phenomena or the existence we can see in engineering. But when it comes to the mechanical engineering, so the degrees of freedom either may be 1 or 2 we are going to be creating. That means one input, one output we are going to be calling that as a degrees of freedom is equal to 1. And when we are going to say degrees of freedom is equal to 2, then in this case what will happen? The 2 inputs, 1 output, or 1 input and 2 outputs we are going to be witnessing in this case. So I hope you are able to understand what is the mechanism and what is the machines and what is the structure. So what is the outcome in this case? We are trying to understand here what is the mechanism. We understood that the mechanism is nothing but a combination of the rigid bodies or the resistance bodies. When they are connected to each other, they are going to be creating a definite relative motion is going to be creating. Then we can say that's going to be the mechanism. What is the machine? The machine is nothing but the mechanism or a combination of the mechanism to develop the desired output from the system. Then what is the structure? When the degrees of freedom is equal to 0, then the structure is used only to the transmission of the force only. But when it comes to the mechanism and the machines, we are using to transmit the motion and the desired, that means conversion of the one form of the energy into the another form of the energy is going to be taken. But in the structures, that's not going to be possible. And we have seen the different applications in the real world applications. Thank you. If you feel any difficulty, then please put in the comment section so that I can reach you out. Thank you.